Endeavor is a rather controversial character in Boku no Hero Academia, and it's easy to see why. On one hand, he's a flaming badass that talks smack and gets slapped, but always gets back up again. And on the other hand, he's a bad dad. Like, really bad. Like, really, really bad. Really. So today, we're gonna be looking at the psychology behind what makes the literal flame hero himself tick, and break down the most likely explanations for his not so exemplary behavior. So strap in, get comfy, and please smash that like button so I can buy food, cause this is... Now, usually to start building a psychological profile of a person, you'd want to dig into their past. But unfortunately for us, Endeavor's past is a complete mystery. Basically none of it is shown in the series, and I couldn't find anything on the internet about it either, despite my best efforts. So unlike in my other videos where we use the character's rich and detailed past to infer their current behavior, for this one we're gonna instead use Endeavor's current behavior to infer his past, building a case for the possible mechanisms that led him to develop these unhealthy traits as an adult, with the help of state-of-the-art psychological research. For the first couple seasons of My Hero Academia, Endeavor comes off as an unfriendly, egotistical, and rather antisocial person. He's often angry and has little regard for the well-being of the people around him. He's also slightly psychopathic at times in the sense that he clearly lacks empathy. This can be deduced from his bad habit of referring to people as objects. Remember that scene where Shoto wanted to go play with his siblings and Endeavor was just like, no fun allowed, no, don't even look at those things. He also does it again when chatting to All Might about using the loving pronoun that, like he's referring to some sort of creature or something. Okay, so, how does objectifying people equate to a lack of empathy? You see, when you subconsciously treat people like things, it implies that you don't see them as, well, people. And this usually stems from a defect in an individual's basic human ability to put oneself in another person's shoes, or to empathize with them. So, when you can't seem to understand what another person feels, and when you can't relate your own sense of self to theirs, then you tend to stop seeing them as sentient beings like you, and downgrade them to objects that just happen to move around and make noise. Endeavor is also kinda narcissistic. We see this pretty clearly when he goes off and starts a family, kids and all, for the sole purpose of creating a child powerful enough to fulfill his goals for him. Instead of seeing his 3 children as family, he sees them as potential tools to bring him closer to his own selfish ambitions. Like I said, bad dad. The way Endeavor behaves also seems to suggest that he maybe has a little trouble controlling his anger and impulses. I mean, I understand being a proud parent and all, but... Hey, stop! This, in combination with his introverted and standoffish nature, makes him really socially awkward to talk to and be around. Just look at any of his conversations ever. It's apparent that he's not comfortable dealing with other people and isn't as socially savvy as the rest of the cast. Endeavor is also known for having very one-track mind. I mean, this is the guy that spent the last 25 years working 100-hour work weeks seemingly in vain to try and surpass the long-standing #1 hero, All Might. And as we discussed earlier, even went so far as to manufacture a family and create children precisely for this reason. Kinda nutty, but you gotta give it to him. When Endeavor wants something, he really goes for it. So, pop quiz! What do you get when you mix together low empathy, a dash of narcissism, fleeting impulse control, and a hyper-focused one-track mind? That's right, you get a Terminator. Just kidding, you get someone who's probably not cut out to be a husband or father. Someone who's not necessarily malicious, but inadvertently hurts the people around them anyway, while striving blindly towards their goals. And I believe that describes Endeavor to a T. Alright, now that we've got our list of Endeavor traits, we can get into the fun part. The research. Endeavor was abused. Alright guys, hear me out. How you were treated by your parents as a child plays a huge role in how we act as parents. That's just a fact. So Endeavor, who's pretty bad at bringing up his kids, likely also suffered through a not so ideal upbringing himself at the hands of his parents. You see, when our parents raise us a certain way, for example if they neglect us, this method of child rearing gets subconsciously ingrained into us, and when it's finally our turn to become adults and get married, it's more likely that we too will resort to neglecting our kids. Because that's just how we were brought up, and we turned out fine, right guys? Guys, this trend also holds true for abusive parents, with the majority of abusive parents tending to have come from abusive households themselves. It's an unhealthy positive feedback loop, where a parent abuses or neglects his kid, which sets a precedent for further abuse or neglect down the generations. Fun fact: abusers most times cannot or will not relate to other people as people, and choose to instead treat them as objects. They also tend to confuse people for things, sound familiar? And treat others as though they exist solely for their own convenience and don't otherwise have an independent or important life. But with all that being said, I don't think Endeavor was abused as a child per se. Rather, I think he was neglected. If we go back to our previous point that kids who experience a certain parenting style will more likely adopt that same style when they start families of their own, we can start to see why Endeavor was most probably neglected and not directly abused growing up. Endeavor doesn't beat his kids out of malice, contempt, or an unfulfilled desire to get back at the world. He sort of just forgets they exist, because he's too infatuated with his own narcissistic goals, which is still pretty bad by the way. When his protege, Shoto, was born, he effectively cut off the rest of his family and dedicated all his time and energy at home to training the poor 5-year-old so he could eventually surpass All Might. The only times when he does get physically violent are when something stands in his way while he's feverishly pursuing his goals. And that, unfortunately, includes his wife sometimes. Endeavor's social awkwardness could also be a telling sign of his past neglect. You see, children who are neglected by their parents tend to have poor social skills growing up, and most times also pick up violent tendencies down the line. His destructive, one-track mind to become the very best also screams coping mechanism, as Endeavor himself could have developed this abnormal fixation from a young age to suppress and distract from the negative emotions he had experienced as a neglected child. His obsession with becoming the #1 hero, even at the cost of everything else, also kinda makes it seem like he's trying to prove something to someone, doesn't it? If I had to say, I'd put my money on the idea that Endeavor is subconsciously still trying to win over his parents' approval through his career achievements, to finally gain the emotional validation he had been missing during his time as a neglected kid. But that may be reaching a little too far. Whatever the cause, this obsession gave birth to his remarkable personal philosophy, which if you don't know about, be sure to check out my video on it. Wink wink. In summary, Endeavor is a big bad orange man who probably didn't get enough attention from mommy as a kid, and therefore now takes it out on his own children by forgetting they exist. Except Shoto. He really likes Shoto. That's it for this video guys, thanks so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what you think about my analysis of Endeavor. I read every single one of those and will most likely reply. So please, smash that like button and subscribe to save me from existential angst, and I'll see you guys next time.